All right, looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. It's been almost a month since I've done a live stream. Figured I'd jump and do one since I had a new song release last week. If you haven't checked that out, you can find it on my channel or on all the major streaming services. The song is called Anamorphosis. So, like I do sometimes, I'm going to do a little breakdown on that song today, and then I'll maybe talk about some complex rhythmic subjects, metric modulations and polyrhythms and all that. So this song deals with a lot of crazy rhythmic stuff. I also released another video on a 2-chord progression. It's one of my quick lessons, and I had a little song on that, like a minute-long song, and that has a really crazy sort of metric modulation that lots of people have been asking me about. So I'm going to go into that and kind of explain how that works, because it's pretty complex, but I think pretty interesting, and there's lots of sort of possibilities with this kind of thing. So let me load up the song here, and we can check it out. And if you have any questions on any of this stuff as I'm going along, just let me know. Obviously, it's been a minute since I've live streamed, so if you have questions on anything that I've done recently, let me know. All right. Here we go. So this is the song. Let's make sure its audio is playing through. Okay, cool. Very good. All right, so I'm just going to go through the whole thing. I'm not going to talk too much about the structure of it, because that's actually really the subject of my masterclass lesson that's coming out on Monday. It's really all about the form of this song, the structure of it. So we're not going to worry about that too much today. I'm just kind of going to go through all the parts and look at all the different instruments and how they're interacting with each other. So this is my beer stein that I'm drinking water out of. I don't know if you can see this. It has a guitar on it. One of my students made this for me, like, I don't know. This has been like 10 years ago. And it says Morgan Wick on the handle. Probably can't see that, but it was really funny. I only taught this kid like 4 or 5 times, but I must have really made an impression, because he brought like made me a beer stein and brought it to me. I don't think I drank beer at that time, so obviously I drink beer now. Anyway, here we go. Here's the beginning. And then it's into the melody. So let's take a look here. Rhythmically, what's going on? We have measures of 13/8, and that's a big portion of this song is in 13/8. And it's really based on one specific pattern, and you'll hear it in the hand claps if I solo those. These are virtual hand claps, by the way. I didn't do the hand clapping. I'll talk about that in a second, but the patterns are 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. So, and it's super fast. The tempo on this song is, I think, 250 beats per minute. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but faster. Yep. That speed. So that's the underlying rhythm, and that's actually the rhythm that's happening during this intro section too. It's like the 2 groups of 2 happen in the rhythm guitars, then leads do the group of 3, then the rhythms do group of 3, then leads do group of 3. Oops, I have everything muted. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And also the chord progression that happens in this intro part is a combination of chord progressions that happen later on. So it was just a way to bring some of the other elements of the song into this part and kick it off with a bang, right? So if we look at how the rhythm guitars, let's do the guitars and bass. Right, obviously they're trading off of each other, the rhythm instruments and the leads. It's cool, this kind of stuff. If it's really dense, you leave space for the faster notes to kind of cut through, and we'll see some of that stuff later on too. And then all these parts are just doubled with different sort of keyboards. Let's see what we got. Acoustic piano. There's quite a bit of piano in this song. Let's see which I'm using for the piano. This is Maverick from Native Instruments. This is kind of my go-to piano sound. I think I've used this on most of the stuff I've done for the Prog School. I'm using the jazzy Maverick settings. This song is very sort of jazz influenced, and you'll definitely see that if you watch my masterclass lesson next week. This song is essentially just it's really just a jazz tune, as crazy as that might seem. So I wanted to go for the jazzy sound of the piano, right? We hear that later on here. Really, the piano's kind of giving you the main harmonic sort of structure of this whole sort of melodic section too. Right, that kind of a sound. So the piano is doing some hits at the intro. We have the synth doing a lead. I want to say this is probably, this is my go-to lead sound in Massive. And then we have electric piano doing this lead part as well. This is gentle electric piano, another sound I use all the time. I kind of find sounds that I like and stick with them, as opposed to always jumping around. And then the pad, this is just from the real basic Native Instruments library series. I took a preset I liked and kind of increased the attack so it has a little bit more. Because pads sometimes don't have enough attack for me. Right. That doubles the piano. And then the synth and electric piano do the lead part. And then we'll get the guitars in there and the bass. And this all combines. Right, so classic stuff, just kind of doubling guitar parts with synth, pianos, pads, all that stuff. I kind of like to do that stuff a lot and just thicken up these sections, especially if this is the intro of the song. I want it to be big and intense. So that's what's going on there. And then we break into this sort of vamp before the melody kicks in. So we have that hand clap rhythm that I talked about earlier, and that's actually happening here. Now this is Drum Lab, and I was actually gonna clap these myself afterwards, but I put this in as a placeholder, and I listened to it, and I was like, actually that sounds pretty good, so I didn't even worry about trying to clap it myself. So. There's plenty of virtual instruments out there that do hand clapping and various sort of percussion things and things with your hands. So, it's worth looking into if you're looking for that kind of a sound. I was really inspired by Pat Metheny group on this particular section or this particular idea. I don't know if anyone's listened to any Pat Metheny, especially Pat Metheny group. Lots of sections with hand claps. I think the song "The First Circle," that's one of my favorite Pat Metheny tunes, and there's this big hand clapping odd meter. I think it actually starts this tune with the hand clapping. Yeah, it does. So very much influenced by that. Pat Metheny's probably one of my favorite jazz guitarists, if not my favorite jazz guitarist. So against that 13/8 rhythm in the hand clapping, there's actually a steady half note happening in the electric piano and clean guitar. Giving you this steady pulse. And that's kind of going to be one of the defining features of this song is these really odd patterns against steady pulses, right? If you watch my master class from last month, I talked about overriding, which is essentially this technique where you're doing a steady pulse over an odd meter. So that's very much a part of this song, even although it's done in more of a complex way than you might typically see. But so those two parts together. So there's a ton of syncopation happening by having that odd pattern against the straight pulse of the guitars and piano. And then the piano enters in with these big chords. And the drums do that pulse as well here. So only the hand claps are doing the 13/8 at this point, and then later on other instruments are going to kind of take it over, and so it kind of goes back and forth between different instruments as the song goes along. As far as drums go, I'm using Modern and Massive. That's my go-to. You see on almost all the Prog School stuff. Bass this is the last song, Prog School song, that's going to have virtual bass. Everything from this point forward has real bass. And I've recorded and mixed, at least, what have I done? I've finished mixing 2 more songs for the rest of the year. The other ones I'm working on finishing right now. But all real bass on those. Really excited. I actually have live drums on a couple of the tunes, and one of them we're going to shoot a big music video for, so super stoked about that. Some really long songs. I have a 9-minute song, an 8.5-minute song, a 7.5-minute song, so all sorts of stuff coming for the rest of the year. And I think my mixes are vastly improved from this is the last piece from the first group of pieces that I wrote and mixed. So since then I've improved my mixing quite a bit, I think. So our next tunes you will look at will be not only have real bass, but they'll be considerably better mixed, at least in my opinion. So, but here I'm using Shreddage 3. This is a really good virtual bass instrument from Impact Soundworks. We'll see some of the another one of their plugins later on, but yeah, so bass. Actually sounds pretty good. And I did some processing to it, so drums and bass. And the rhythm guitars. Right. So that's kind of your rhythm section sound. And that I think the heaviness of that plays in contrast to all the other layered parts in the orchestration and the melodic sections pretty well. That was kind of my idea. It was like you have all these jazz chords and pretty kind of melodic, like a pretty singable melody, pretty simple, but that's juxtaposed against this like polyrhythmic craziness happening underneath. I don't know what this is 7-string guitar, by the way. I don't know if anyone watched the playthrough video would see that, but I haven't actually had a 7-string song, like full song for the Prog School yet, as far as the rhythm guitars go. So I figured it was time to do that for there. And there's just some processing on the rhythm guitars. I won't worry about showing you mixing stuff on this look through. So then let's listen to this whole sort of melodic section. I'll talk about it. All right, so that's the whole main melody, and there's really like an A section and a B section. The chords that are happening here are quite interesting. I'm actually going to pull up the sheet music so we can take a look at those with the piano. And the majority of these are kind of happening in the acoustic piano, but it's mostly based around chordal chords. So that kind of sound. So chordal chords are chords built off the interval of a fourth instead of a third, like you'd have with typical major chords, right? So it's this sound. It's a very open sound. It doesn't have really a major sound or a minor sound. It's kind of like ambiguous or in between. So the song is really in D minor for the most part, but that first chord that plays here, you got a D in the bass, E, A, and D. So it doesn't have a third, right? So right off the bat, you don't really get like, you don't get minor, right? Or major. Ambiguous. this. And then the next chord it moves to is this chordal shape moves up a minor third, or 3 frets. And the bass note moves up a half step. So this is really a E flat 6/9, but I'm really kind of thinking of it as more of these chordal voicings. So the first 2 chords together. A very interesting sound, a very open sound. So writing a melody over this was kind of tricky. That and that the rhythm is tricky too, but so I went for a simpler melody that was really melodic, and I think that contrasts the complexity of the rhythm pretty well. So that's kind of what's going on with the chords, and all of the A sections are really built off these chordal voicings, and they just move around. The bass notes kind of move chromatically in a lot of cases, and the chords just kind of playing on top of that. The other thing about that is if you look at that, the chords are not changing on the downbeat, which is pretty complex, especially with 13/8. So that was another element that made this tricky to write a melody over, and then to solo over, or to write a solo over for the guitar solo. Having melodies or having chords that don't change on the downbeat is hard enough in 4/4, but it's really tricky in a odd time signature like this. And the chords are changing in spots where that hand clapping, that 13/8 rhythm is happening. So anytime there's an accent of the 13/8 rhythm, like the chords are changing in those places. It's just not always the downbeat. And I kind of did this based on feel, like where I felt like it sounded good to have the chords change, and then adjusted them if I felt it was necessary. So that's that. And let's see, the melody is done. We've got a couple clean guitars. And electric piano. I had envisioned doing, once again, like a Pat Metheny style, like sung vocal thing along with the melody. And if I redo this song, which I may re-record it at some point, I might do that. Once again, if you ever listen to any Pat Metheny group, like the with different syllables and stuff, I think that would sound really cool over this. So I may do that at some point, but we've got 2 clean guitars. I don't even know exactly what the effects are on these. Let's see. Just delay and reverb. What does this one have? A chorus on it? Oh, they're in octaves, yeah. Yeah, simple enough. And then the melody gets taken over by the lead guitar, the heavy lead guitar and synth halfway through the second A section. Right here. And that was actually fairly weird to write. So it's a little bit odd to have the feel of something change completely right in the middle of a section. So this is an 8-bar section here, this A section, and the guitars and drums and lead guitars and all that, they kick in the 4th bar. So it's a little bit weird, but that's what kind of felt right to me, and I really wanted to like have this hit out of nowhere, right? Instead of it slowly ramping up to something. So that's kind of where it felt natural for me to do that. There was something I was inspired by, I believe, with this particular idea, and I can't remember what it was. It was something where like things hit like in a weird spot, and it sounded really cool to me. Anyway, if I think of it, I'll mention it. But and here we got, before the 13/8 rhythm, here's what the drums are doing in the first sort of A section. Just doing that half note sort of pulse. And then when the second A section kicks in, we're going to get that 13/8 rhythm happening in the kick, I believe. Yeah. Right. And all these chugging rhythms, if I just solo the rhythm parts, all these chugging rhythms are just variations on this 13/8 rhythm kind of in this section. And like in this part later. Right. It's just variations on the 13/8 rhythm. And it's actually was fairly tricky to play. Actually, I think I kind of read along with the music as I played those because it was weird figuring out where the chords changed because they're not changing on the downbeat, as I mentioned. And then this leads into our B section. And the B section's where everything is completely different. I wanted different kinds of chords, a different groove. We're not in 13/8 anymore. Now we're in 6/4, which is close to 13/8, but much more straightforward. A little bit heavier, a little bit darker. The chords here are, instead of doing all these chordal chords, now we have like basic minor chords. If it's C minor 9, then E flat minor major 7, and a diminished D flat 6/9, E flat 6/9, and then I think it's C sharp minor to B half diminished. So interesting chords. Definitely not, none of them are really coming from the same key or anything like that. It's very much like a modal thing on each chord, but and I don't have my 7-string with me right now. It's getting worked on right now because it needs some serious work. Spicy progression, yes, it is. So I'm not going to play any of the rhythm parts. That's my excuse for not playing any of the rhythm parts. So when we get to the crazy rhythm parts later on, I can play them, trust me. But I just don't have my 7-string, so I can't do it right now. Yeah, but I'm a big fan of the minor major 7 chord. I've used that in all sorts of songs. So that makes an appearance here in the B section. All right, let's get into the solo. So essentially, the background behind the solo is the same as what it was during this whole melodic section. You have these 13/8 sections, and you have a 6/4 section. And the instrumentation I kind of just slowly build up throughout the course of the solo. Goes from having no rhythm guitars and just one electric piano to getting some more instruments in there too. So let's just listen through it, and don't ask me to play this solo straight through because I cannot do it right now. I'll play some of the licks though. If there's one in particular you want me to play, let me know. Just not that really fast one at the end. Anyway, that solo was really tough to write, and this is one of those cases where a lot of times when I'm recording a solo or figuring out a solo, I'll kind of improvise something, and then it'll slowly turn into an actual song or an actual solo, over time. But with something this complex, I literally had to just kind of go section by section and work it out slowly and figure out what fit within a given space of time, because it's in 13/8 and the chords are complex and they're changing in weird places. So all three of those things make it hard to improvise anything over. Like for instance, this first little intro lick. I had to do a very specific sort of arpeggio sound there because it's really an F. It's just an F, C, and G, like a a power chord with a second added in. Right? There's no major or minor third, so I had to do voicing or like licks that went around, like didn't hit a third at all. Then here, when the chord changes, I'm doing stuff all like E flat Lydian-ish for this whole lick. That one, which might be my favorite lick from the whole solo. It's kind of fun and kind of floats out the fingers pretty well once you get it down. And then we got some fast pick in there. And then there's... That's right. Oof. There we go. Obviously I haven't played this in a long time. But I have some of these big shapes that I like. It's like a fifth with an added ninth. It's sort of open sound, similar to how the chords are more of an open sound because they're chordal chords. These lead parts kind of catch that as well. There we go. That lick is tricky. And then we have some more melodic. Like I have a little sort of motif that goes to the second section. That. And some more eighth note runs. And all these things are kind of arpeggiating the chords that are happening. And then the B section gets a little more rocky in spots. Right? Like bigger bends for some of that stuff. And then it's into the absolutely crazy tapping section, which I'm not even going to attempt to try to do. But it's really a lot of kind of pentatonic shapes, like big stressed out pentatonic shapes, some of this stuff. That kind of sound. I think that's how the beginning of that goes. Something like that. It actually wasn't too bad once I practiced it a bunch to get it down. It's kind of literally just like cram as many notes in one spot as possible. So I was trying to do a lot more fusion-esque style runs in this solo, a lot of these straight eighth note runs that you might hear a fusion player do. Chromaticism, really following the chord changes and all that. Like this last lick. That's not how it goes. Something like that. Yeah, that's a tricky one too with the shifting and barring, but so yeah, that's the solo. It's a good one. I think it works really well for the song. And really, there's not anything else super technical in the lead guitar anywhere in the song. The rest of the song, just plays melodies in the lead guitar. So I felt like I could go over the top here and it would be totally fine because it's not just like shredding throughout the whole song. All right, back to Studio One. Then we go into this riffy section, which is probably the coolest part of the whole song. But that sounds like so. All right. So what's going on here? First of all, this is once again just the same thing again. It's the same chord progressions from earlier and the same kind of sections, but now it's done as more of this crazy riff. And what's happening is it riffs for 4 bars worth, and then there's like a drum solo for 4 bars. It's like trading fours like you'd have in a jazz tune. So we're trading riffs with drum solos. And now the drum solos aren't completely by themselves. There's these power chords kind of holding underneath them. But these riffs are based off this 13/8 rhythm again, and they're kind of switching. They're switching between the left and right rhythm guitar, and I guess the synths are kind of doubling that too. So if I play just the rhythm guitars and synths, you'll see they're bouncing. These runs are bouncing back and forth between left and right. And then some of them are together, right? Left, right, together, left, together. And then it happens again in the B section. And all of these little runs, these little fills that are happening between the power chords are based on chordal harmony, just like the rest of the song, so intervals of a fourth. I can't play this part with the low chugs anyway because I don't have my 7th string with me yet. These sounds, those kinds of sounds. I think the fast run is... the last run there. Once again, those kind of open sounds. And then there's a variation on that in the second B section because the chords are a little bit different. Yeah, is there an octave difference between... I guess there is an octave. I didn't even think about that. Let's see. Well, yeah, so they're not actually... They're in octaves like when they do there, yeah. And I believe all of these things are completely doubled in the synth. And they're also panned in the synth, too. So the synth is just doing the runs. Right, so the one goes up an octave. I really wanted the synth in combination with these runs to kind of give it that, I don't know, maybe less organic sound. More computerized. This section was supposed to be just like, it's supposed to be super technical and not really sound terribly like organic or musical. Right? Yeah, it's octaves in parts. Like at the end, we'll get there in the last section of this whole trading thing. They're completely in octaves. So octaves are... a super easy way to write. It's like the easiest way to harmonize something. You just do it in octave because it's not really a harmony. That explains the synthiness, yes, because there's synths in there. They just kind of blend in with the guitars. Make the guitars sound cleaner. They have perfectly played synths in the background. So then it goes to this crazy section. I'm going to try to explain what's going on here rhythmically. This goes into the sort of polymetric thing I was talking about earlier, but... where is it? Here we go. Nope. Next part. Here we go. All right, so let's listen to what the... All right, so we've got 6/4, and I'm going to pull up the sheet music for this part. So we have 6/4, and really I'm thinking of this because it's so fast. I'm thinking of this as 2 beats. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6, and that happens. I mean, most of the times that this happens in the song, you'll hear that. If I play that section from here. 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 5. So I'm really just feeling it as 2 beats. So what I do in this particular section is I take what I'm feeling as 2 beats And where you'd normally have 6 notes within that space, which would be straight eighth notes, I'm now cramming 7 notes within that space. So it's kind of like, I think it's like a 2-2-3 pattern within 3 beats. So it's 7 notes within where you'd normally have the space of 6. So that sounds super complex, and it is a little tricky, but essentially it just feels like slightly off kilter and a little bit faster. So I don't know if I can even count along because it's so fast, but 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 something like that. So if I clap those 2s and 3s, so just kind of a weird off-kilter variation of this particular rhythm. I could have just done 6, but having 7 notes within there feels weirder and also feels a little bit faster, which I think works for this particular section. And this 7 against 6 actually comes back the last time this section happens too, at the end of the song. And so the drums, like during all these fills, you can see it's not on the grid at all because it's 7 notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 within each beat, right? So it was a little bit weird to write a drum because essentially this is like these riffs trade with a drum solo, and I'm not a drummer, so I know what drummers do. So I did my best to try to write something I thought sounded kind of drummer-esque. And then, as I mentioned before, this last section here with the trading, the guitars are in unison. They're not trading back and forth now. Now they're completely in octaves. Including one that goes literally all the way up to the, I think it's the left guitar. No, right. Yeah, that one. Because you have the low A string on a 7 string and then the highest note A on there. So I think it's like a 4 octave difference right there within that one part. That's my favorite part. It's kind of cool. They're separate in the earlier parts, and now they're all synced up. And the synths obviously doubling that too. And then throughout this whole section, there's also the pads and electric pianos playing like these big chords. Yeah. So here's the last like drum solo part here. This is stupid. Oh no, I don't want that. No, stop. Sorry, my computer's gonna try to open another program here. I don't want it. It's like 16th note. There's 16th notes at 250 beats per minute, which drummers can do. But now, I did try to base all the drum sort of fills and stuff off of the rhythmic patterns that are happening, and I think that makes the drum solo kind of fit in a little bit. I didn't do the best job of making it sound super, or it does sound superhuman. I didn't do the best job of making it sound human. Once again, I think in my newer mixes, I've gotten a lot better at making, especially the program drums, sound a little bit more realistic. But, it's cool. Anyway, it's fast and intense. So now it moves on to this section, which is kind of our orchestrated, slow section after all this craziness. All right. So I really like this part. I brought in some strings for this section, and what I'm using here is BBC Symphony Orchestra. Now this is actually, well, I guess technically it's not free. So if you sign up with Spitfire Labs or Spitfire Audio, and if you fill out this questionnaire and wait 30 days, they'll give you this for free. Otherwise, you have to pay $50 for it, which I think it'd be worth it in that case. Spitfire Labs also has a bunch of free, like a huge, it's called Spitfire Labs. They have great plugins or virtual instruments you can pay for too. But they have this thing called Labs, and it's a bunch of free sounds, like of all different kinds of instruments, and really good stuff and super useful. And there's a massive catalog of stuff. So if you're looking for some really good free virtual instruments, I'd recommend Spitfire Labs. And if you're willing to wait 30 days, you can get this particular sound for free. And I use this quite a bit for strings and orchestral sort of sounds. And this is what the string parts sound like. And really, this just kind of doing the melody of the song. But you'll notice this little motif gets traded between cello, then viola, and then the violins. So the cello, or cellos, and then it trades with the viola, and then violin. So we're still dealing with these kind of complex chord progressions, so I really had to think about how each part was interacting with the other one and which note they chose to do. But the idea is it kind of slowly builds through this orchestrated section until it gets to the last part, which kind of opens up. Very simple variation on the melody. And then there's these arpeggiated things that are happening. Electric piano, acoustic piano, and then the staccato string. I really like that. Sounds cool, especially in the background. Just kind of really adds a lot of I think character to this part. That's kind of slamming out power chords. In here we have, this is one of my favorite virtual instruments. Anytime I need like these fast, aggressive kind of strings, this is Staccato Strings by Impact Soundworks. I mentioned them when I talked about the virtual bass. They also make really good virtual guitar. They have a bunch of awesome virtual instruments. Impact Soundworks does. But this one, I think I actually got it free for purchasing a different one of their instruments. But it sounds really good for this kind of stuff. And you can choose different types of instrument, like different number of instruments. So here's 8, or 1, or 3 is what I did. You just get a lot of separation between the notes, you know, if you want those sort of fast string runs. Especially in context, sounds cool. I dropped my pick, and now it's lost to the abyss. Any of you guitar players will understand. Yeah, so that arpeggiated thing is going to come back a little bit later too. So then it's into this vamp section again, and then right back into the melody, the main melody, but this time done like much more aggressively the whole time. So we'll... So here, this is doing the 7 against 6 like it was doing during the riffy section. One of these cuts in, one of these cuts in, one of these cuts in. So we have arpeggios again. And back to the intro. And then ends with the hand claps. So there you go. Lots of variations on the last part here is really just kind of a louder version of the beginning melody, and it kind of brings in some of the different elements. So you have the 7 against 6 rhythm during this bridge section, and then you have the arpeggios in the strings and piano happening at the very end. So kind of bringing back some elements from earlier towards the end, and also the main melody is played with the violin from earlier at the end. It's very much in the background, but that's kind of what's happening there. So yeah, that's the whole song. It's I'm pretty proud of this one. I think it's very, very interesting, and it was a kind of an experiment for me as far as writing it, and it turned out even as good as I could have hoped for. So the masterclass lesson the masterclass lesson I have dropping this month comes out on Monday, and it covers this song and kind of all how I went about kind of constructing all the different parts and really what it's all based on. So I didn't really go too much into that here, but it's really talking about the form or the structure of the piece mostly. Yeah, and I also have quite a few pretty long, in-depth, insane videos coming out this month, including a 22-minute riff lesson video on a band that everyone keeps asking me about. And, when people ask, they get what they want. So I got a few minutes left. I thought it'd be fun to talk about some metric modulation. So I posted this on my Instagram today, and this is something I put out a while back. Is this lesson, part of the quick lesson, one of my quick lessons, or the first quick lesson I did actually, I guess. And it had this metric modulation in there. Well, the lesson was really about this chord progression, but it had this metric modulation within this little song I wrote for it. And it's quite intense. So I want to take a look at it real quick and see if I can explain what's going on, because no one's really figured it out. A number of people have had guesses that were pretty close, but it's a cool concept. It's definitely not something I came up with, but I think it's fun. So once we load up here, live streaming and loading up big. There we go. This is all still doing in automation from mixing. So this one has real bass. The glories of real bass. So here's the metric modulation. Let's take a look real quick. Where did it have it? And then it goes back to the original groove and tempo. Ooh. My CPU performance is almost peaking here. That's if you hear a glitch, that's probably what's happening. So what we have is here's the time signature. So it starts in 15/16 for all of these main sections, and then it goes to 19/16 when the metric modulation. So the 15/16 is grouped as 4/3/4/4. So it's really like 4/4, but the second beat has 3/16 notes instead of 4. So 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So try to count along with that. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Right? So that's what's happening there. And that's the groove for the most of the song, except for this part where it metrically modulates. So what happens is what used to contain 4/16 notes, in this case, I guess 1 quarter note here. What I do is I make that then contain 5 notes instead. So in the space of what would be a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5, right? But it's not. What happens is it's not going to quintuplets. So it's actually going to. What happens is the tempo actually gets faster, and those 5 notes are 16th notes at a faster tempo, but those 5 notes would fit within 1 beat of the slower tempo that the rest of the song is in. So it goes from 100 BPMs to 125. So if So my clapping, if I clap what is essentially quarter notes, the first beat in the new metric modulation should actually have the same amount of clapping time. So, right. But I'm treating the notes in between that space as 16th notes now, so that's why the tempo has to increase. And then what I do as far as the pattern goes, so in 15/16 you had 4 3 4 4. And I just add 1 number to each of those. So now, in this faster tempo, in this part where it's modulated, it goes 5 4 5 5. So instead of 4 3 4 4, you add 1 to each of those, you get 5 4 5 5. It's maybe too fast for me to count along, but 1 2 3 5 1 2 3 5 1 2 3 5 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. Right? So I can't keep it at the same tempo because so if I wrote this as quintuplets, which the first beat would work, right? If I just had a 4/4 measure that went 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and I could just put 5 notes within each of those beats and you'd have 4 groups of quintuplets. But because I don't have an even pattern here, because I'm not doing 4/4, I have to actually adjust the tempo so that you get the same sort of effect. So it is the feeling of shifting from 16th notes to quintuplets, but I actually have to adjust the tempo up and speed it up so that it works with these new patterns. The idea is not so much based on the actual tempo so much as it is how many notes are fitting within each given space, right? So if I have 4 3 4 4, those are the notes that are fitting within that given space, and I'm going to then cram 5 4 5 5 within the same amount of space, except for the 3 and between the 3 and the 4 is going to be a little bit different time wise because I'm treating these as even notes. It's a pretty complex thing, but I've dealt with this metric modulation at least a little bit, and there's some really good videos out there on this kind of thing. I can't remember the guy's name. Yogev. I follow him. He does the best rhythmic explanations of like insane rhythms from prog songs or any songs really. But he talks about this concept in particular, I think, in one of his videos. But it's really just like shifting the amount of notes you're cramming into a certain amount of space. So, but not just changing the subdivision, right? You actually have to change the tempo to match up. So let's listen one more time kind of through when this all hits. So I think actually the drums are maybe a good example of this, is they go back into the 4/4, or the original tempo. So what I actually do is so we went from having this space, what contained 4 notes, that space now contains 5 when it goes to this faster tempo. So to get back to the 4, I just have, I do it in reverse. So what would contain 5 notes at this faster speed now contains 4. So if I do this last measure, where's it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And that instantly kind of gets you back in the old tempo. So it's not and I do the reverse going into it, is like I do a group of 5. And that just kind of sets up every time the tempo changes, right? So it sets it up into this faster tempo and then sets it up into the slower tempo. There's a kind of way to make this sound really natural, because sometimes metric modulations can sound a little bit jarring, right? I think I could have gone straight into it and out of it and it would have been fine, but it worked a little bit better to have a one sort of beat of transition in and out. Ooh, my computer's having a hard time with this. Well, this piece has all the processing on it and mixing done, so kind of the computer's trying to handle that and live streaming at the same time. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening in this drum part. I love the groove in this part that modulates tons of ghost notes. Anyway, so that's that. So if anyone's wondering what happens in that metric modulation, that's what happens. And it's pretty involved. It's something I've been kind of messing with. This is just metric modulations in general and changing tempos and some more really advanced rhythmic techniques beyond just like doing odd time signatures. So you'll probably hear some more of this kind of stuff in my music going forward, I would guess. You know, and when I'm writing, I'm always trying to bring in some new ideas or try to push myself in different ways. So anyway, thanks for hanging out today and checking out my latest tune. And dang it, my camera shut off in the seconds. I'll probably be back to live streaming in a couple weeks, either 2 or 3 weeks, depending on what's going on. So my summer schedule is getting kind of crazy with gigs, which is good because they've been gone for a long time. So it'd be nice to be doing that again. So depending on when my gigging schedule is, you know, that might determine which Fridays I live stream on. But I'll definitely do a live stream every time a new song drops, unless I happen to be out of town. So yeah, I've got all sorts of awesome videos coming up. Thanks for hanging out, Evan. So yeah, check them out. Check out my other videos. You know what to do. I'll see you guys all in a couple weeks.